The front door slammed shut. The wedding photos on the wall almost fell off from the force of the vibration. My wife and I just had another fight. Now she has gone to her sister with a suitcase in hand. I needed to lean against the door for my blood pressure to slowly begin to drop. These hostilities have continued periodically for the past 6 years. Again, as usual, this fight was because I found her wandering into the house last night well after midnight. As usual, she smelled of beer and cigarette smoke. Her makeup was smeared and her panties were hanging out of her purse. When I asked her if everything was okay, she drunkenly told me to go to hell. I stood there, shocked by the complete disrespect I was just shown. Then the next day, when I answered the phone, a man asked her. When I said she was still sleeping, he asked me to tell her that he would be waiting for her at the bar. Then I realized that our marriage was truly over. That's it, she continued to cheat on our marriage. I remembered the weather conditions the day we got married. It must have cast an ominous shadow over our marriage. I married Margaret 8 years ago. I didn't know then that she had a 12-year-old daughter. She struggled to keep a roof over her head. She only had a low-paying job at a diner I frequented. We dated for several months, fell in love, and got married. Now I wonder if she ever truly loved me. Margaret and I walked out of the small chapel next to the courthouse to a cold and windy winter day. It was Thursday and school ended just before noon that day for the Christmas holidays. A little girl named Carrie was wearing a very beautiful white dress. She was our ring bearer and flower girl. Margaret's sister, Claire, had Carrie living with her and her husband Tom. Carrie cried as we started to leave. It broke my heart to see the little girl crying, so I walked up to her, leaned over, and told her that everything would be fine and that she would see her aunt in just a few days. She hugged my neck very tightly, and I kissed her on the cheek. I love my mommy. I teared up. I love her too. It wasn't until much later that I realized what she really meant. Margaret and I only got out of bed to get room service and use the bathroom. Then, eventually, only to leave to return home. I felt like this weekend was the beginning of the life I had been dreaming of, that I had finally found the woman to fill the hole left by the death of my wife that I had been looking for. Life was good after we returned home. Now I had a loving wife at home, whom I had dreamed of for so long, and also the possibility of children calling me Dad. I hoped that soon we would have that big family that I so dreamed of. I also hoped that I would have the son I always wanted. I didn't even suspect that all this would turn into a nightmare. My 20-year-old stepdaughter, Carrie, came up to me and put her arm around my shoulders. "Why, Daddy, do you put up with her crap?" she cried. "She's nothing but a fickle piece of trash." The day before, Carrie celebrated her birthday. She also just recently completed the first half of her freshman year of college. I held her for a few minutes, letting her cry. Her tears became visible on my shirt. When she raised her head, her eyes were red and puffy. She used my shirt to wipe her nose and sob. I thanked her. I have to tell you, something that will hurt a lot. Her sobs turned into body-shaking sobs. "That bitch has been cheating on you for years." Her crying turned into a real scream. She would go to Aunt Claire's, change her clothes, and go out to meet a man at a bar. I held her as I sat on the couch, letting her cry. I then took her petite figure and sat her on my lap. I held her in my strong arms and let her cry, just like I did when she was a child, after she hurt herself falling off her bike. Just like when Aunt Claire first let her start riding her new bike that year at our 4th of July event. And BBQ, Carrie was 13. She felt sick after running over a curb and cried so much that her tears soaked my shirt. That's when I learned that Carrie was actually Margaret's daughter. After she calmed down a bit, I told her that I knew. "Carrie, I've known about your mother's infidelity for a long time." I started getting emotional and tearing myself up. It was about the last quarrel. I paused briefly to reflect on our past. I tried for years to get her to stop. My tears flowed too. It took me several minutes before I could speak again. I told her this morning that I was tired and had already contacted a divorce lawyer. That's why she left. Carrie leaned back and wiped a tear from my cheek. She just laughed and said, "Okay." Carrie had to wipe away her tears a few more times. Then she said it was time. I told her to watch her tongue. "Your mother said the only reason she married me was so that I would eventually take care of you." I pulled Carrie closer to me. "That she needs a roof over her head so she can go out and have sex without some fucking kid hanging on her coattail." Did my own mother hate me that much? Tears began to flow again. "It is not my fault. It wasn't me who spread my legs and got pregnant." A giant sob shook my body. Those were her exact words. I hugged Carrie to let her know I loved her. "For the life of me, I can't understand why she hates you so much," I said between sobs. From the first moment I met them, Carrie seemed like a beautiful little girl who wanted nothing more than to be happy and bring joy to others. Her smile will light up the room and your heart. Why would anyone want to live apart from a sweet little girl like Carrie? I couldn't imagine living like this with any child I'd ever had. It would break my heart. Carrie buried her head in my neck and hugged me. "Dad, what will happen now?" Her voice was muffled by my neck. Every time she called me that, a shiver of joy ran through me. Why she does this, I don't know why, even though I'm the only real father she's ever known. The lawyer hired an investigator to follow them and get definitive evidence. They don't believe rumors in this state. We both sobbed at the same time. "Then I will officially file for divorce. I will make sure your mother gets nothing." My voice was shaking with excitement over this whole disgusting situation. "Okay, this bitch doesn't deserve anything," she said quite convincingly through her tears. I could hear the hatred for her mother in Carrie's voice. To explain that the hateful incident happened when Carrie was 15 years old. Carrie and Claire were at my house. I taught Carrie in one of her math classes. Margaret and Claire decided to have a few cocktails. In just a couple of hours, both women were drunk. Suddenly, Carrie needed to be taken to the doctor. She had some girl problems. I tried to wake up Margaret or Claire, but no one answered. So Carrie and I left. At the hospital, in my presence, Carrie had to explain her problems to the doctor in front of people who were not her mother and father. The reason her mother didn't answer was very simple. Her real mother passed out drunk in bed upstairs. She couldn't even make sure her daughter was taken care of properly. I think from that day on, Carrie considered me her real parent. Her mother was declared persona non grata. For the last 6 years, I've been trying to let her stop. She rejected all my attempts. My anger began to take over. "Enough is enough," I hugged Carrie as my anger boiled over. I thought that at least I still had my little girl. "That's not what I meant before, since we're not related. Do you want me to leave school?" She raised her head, tears flowing freely. "No, baby." I tried to wipe away her tears. "Your mother destroyed this family. I will not and cannot take it out on you." I leaned back to look into her eyes. I saw the fear that I would reject her too. "Besides, your education is very important. I can never take it away from you." I kissed her tenderly on the cheek. She hiccuped from crying so much. "Besides, you only go to school here in town." I pulled her back to me and hugged her tighter. "We are very fortunate that this university also has a law school. Besides, I won't kick you out because of your mother. You will still and always have a place to live here." I kissed her forehead. "I can't imagine losing you either. Besides, I will still continue to pay for your education." I tried to put on a brave face. We sat for a while, comforting each other without talking. I eventually heard the contented sigh she made when I held her in my arms when she was a little girl. Then my stomach reminded me that I hadn't eaten all day. "Hey, what's for dinner?" "I'm hungry." I carefully pushed her away from me. She didn't weigh much, but I needed to end this crying session. I also needed a change of mood. "Yes, sir. Now I will dine with you like a king." I tried to slap her on the butt, but she was too fast. I will definitely miss her wit and our little banter when she finally leaves. The thought occurred to me that the man she marries would be given a real prize. As I sat there, my thoughts went back to when Carrie first came to live with us. When she turned 18 before graduating from high school, Carrie left Aunt Claire's house and moved here. She wanted to connect with her biological mother, a man she knew very little about. She also wanted to be close to the college she plans to attend in the fall. What she discovered was deep disappointment in her mother. She found a drunken, cheating bitch who didn't care about keeping the house clean. While her mother slept drunk, Carrie took care of the house. This was on top of her schoolwork. I also remembered why the soon-to-be ex-wife wouldn't get anything. I started mowing lawns after school and in the summer when I was a 16-year-old teenager. I was so successful that my parents, when I turned 18 and graduated from high school, invested money for me to buy my first truck and start my own formal business. Whenever possible, while I was still in high school, I took Saturday classes at the county agriculture department on all things lawn and garden related. Then, after graduating from high school, I went to technical college and received a degree in horticulture. In 2 years, I had 5 people working for me. 2 years later, I already had 8 people and about 20 clients. By the age of 27, I was having to turn down requests in order to attract new clients. I already had 15 employees and about 35 clients. Then, at age 19, my sophomore year of college, I married my high school sweetheart. But tragedy happened shortly before our first anniversary. A drunk driver hit Lisa while she was walking to the store. Earlier that day, she was told that she was pregnant with our first child. Then, a few years later, I met Margaret. I currently own a lawn and landscaping company with 5 crews of 6 people, each serving over 100 high-quality clients. We mow their lawns and tend their gardens. These are properties that can be 2 or more acres in size. Some are more formal gardens. My guys work 6 days a week during peak season. My clients also include several home builders in the area. We are in the process of improving their new homes. We can typically build 50 to 75 average value homes in a few days, if the weather permits, of course. For this, I have another team of 5 people, which is engaged only in the construction of new houses. I have also just recently been awarded contracts to develop several shopping centers in the area. I will need to hire a team to do this, and then have that team help with new homes when needed. Most of my lawn and garden team works seasonally. All of my foremen and several full-time crew members work full-time. Most of my employees are school children or students. Also, I just recently bought a parking company. From sweeping to repairs and relining. This should be a separate brigade of a separate company. I'll take this to the mall. During the winter months, some of my full-time employees stay and do snow removal for another 50 clients. This applies to most businesses in the city and its environs. Each of my trucks can be equipped with snow blowers, plus I have 2 other pickup trucks that are also equipped. I was able to do most of this before I was 35. This was mainly done during the time of her fornication, so there's no way in hell I'm letting that bitch be part of this. That's why finding evidence of her infidelity was so important, so my future ex won't get anything. Most days I was completely engrossed in work. The busier I was, the less focused I became on the situation. It took several months to implement everything. And now the day has come to put an end to this travesty of marriage. My lawyer's investigator did a fantastic job. This showed up when we appeared in court. The ex claimed that it was my fault for what she did because of my emotional distress. She stated under oath that she would not have any more children due to fear of being physically and emotionally abused again. She also takes on additional bed partners due to her mental illness. Thanks to Margaret's own testimony, thanks to her dumb lawyer, she opened the door that allowed my lawyer to present her medical history. We couldn't believe our luck. Her lawyer objected. The judge rejected the objection after reading her own testimony. The judge then admitted that when my lawyer introduced it into evidence without violating HIPAA, the ex's medical report showed when the surgery to tie her tubes was performed. The judge rejected her claim of any mental illness. She also implied that I looked at Carrie sexually while she lived with us. He was immediately thrown out of the water, when Carrie quickly stood up and called her a damn liar. The judge reprimanded her for using profanity. Carrie then testified against her mother that she once told her that she had her tubes tied right after giving birth because she didn't want any more bastards. Carrie gave both barrels to her mother. She said her mother told her she was just hungry for sex with anyone she could be friends with. Margaret's lawyer tried in vain to have Carrie's testimony overturned. When it was over, I was granted a divorce without having to pay alimony or transfer any part of the business to her. Moreover, this was firmly established even before we got married. Although it cost me a fair amount of money, I succeeded by refusing to pay the loser. As we stood in the hallway, I noticed Carrie talking to her mother. It looked a little hot at times. When she reunited with me and my lawyer, I asked her about it. "I saw your mother talking to you. What did she say?" "I was just curious to see what happened. She called me a bitch, a traitor, and spat at me." She looked back to where her mother was. "I told her to go to hell and that she had made one huge mistake. She took my hand, and I was going to take full advantage of it." We walked hand in hand to the car and left the courthouse. Carrie laid her head on my shoulder. I was somewhat puzzled by the last point of what she said. Carrie and I celebrated that evening. We went out to dinner and took a long walk along the beach in the moonlight. As we walked, she took my hand. Just like two lovers, she laid her head on my shoulder. Standing up and picking up the seashell, she looked at me with that charming little girl look she gets when she's about to ask a question. "Dad, can I ask you a personal question?" Her hesitation was obvious. "Sure, baby. You don't need to be afraid." This look always captivates me. "You can ask me any question you want. I've always treated you like an adult." Even as a child, I always treated her like family. I always needed to make sure she was prepared for the day when she no longer lived at home. "Can I call you by your name now?" There was hope in her voice. We stopped, and she turned to face me. "Honestly, I'm surprised you haven't done this yet. But yes, you can do it." I smiled at the thought of her being completely interested in me by name. I never adopted Carrie. The bitch didn't want this. She never said why. This will soon turn out for the better. "Then, Dawn, why haven't you tried to kiss me yet?" Her eyes now reflected not only love for her father. "You should have known that I've been in love with you for a long time." I hesitated before speaking. "From the day I found out you were her daughter, it was my responsibility to make sure you were protected from harm. Just like if you were my own biological daughter, I would do the same. I willingly accepted you both into my heart and into my life as my family." I hugged Carrie and kissed her forehead. "In the short time that you lived with us, I fell in love with you too. But not as a man loves a woman, but as a father loves his daughter." I kissed her forehead again. "It was part of the vow I made when I married your mother." My thoughts were confused as to where she was going with the meaning of her request. "Your mother broke that commitment to being a family when she cheated. My heart currently needs to heal before I can accept another." I started to cry quietly. If she meant what I thought, I needed to buy some time. I didn't want to hurt her with any rejection on my part. If I accepted you, or anyone else for that matter, I would ask for time to heal and not judge me too harshly for my actions. We held on to each other. We returned to the car, holding each other, and drove home in silence. Carrie kept her hand in mine the entire time. I was worried about hurting her if I didn't accept her that way, but her hand in mine showed that she wanted to take my affection upon herself. I began to feel that she wanted me to be this lucky one. Over the next few months, the final decision about my divorce was made. Now I was officially free from this bitch. My heart began to slowly heal. I also found that my feelings for Carrie began to slowly change during this time as well. She didn't do anything overtly sexual, but her very presence here every day gave our new home an atmosphere of domestic tranquility. Carrie continued her studies. "It would be great to have your own personal lawyer soon." I also noticed that during this time she never dated. She explained to me that I was working too much at school. I also realized that her affection for me became much more noticeable. Her goodbye kisses were always on her lips. That they also became longer and increased in size over time, becoming more intense. While watching TV, she would sit next to me on the couch and put her head on my shoulder or lie down and put her feet on my lap. Later, I realized that she was playing me like a violin. At dinner, she would reach out to my hand and stroke the back of it. Her "I love you" words became more frequent and sounded in a more sexual tone. When she wasn't at school, she would appear on job sites and bring me lunch. Several times my chief foreman told me to hurry up and marry her. That's when I started to wonder if I was officially that lucky guy. At least I did in the eyes of everyone else except myself. All this happened over the next year after the final decree was passed. Then, just before spring break, before the start of her final semester of senior year, she surprised me with the decision that she had decided to get a degree in business administration and not go to law school. Her coursework focused heavily on business law and finance. Her reasoning was that it would be better for the company. We discussed this several times over the next few weeks. I don't fully understand why. One night at dinner, I brought up this topic again about why she wanted to change. "Carrie, why do you want to change your major? I thought you wanted to be a lawyer." "She may not be my biological daughter," as I said, "but I still want the best for her. I want to be able to run this business for you so you don't have to do other things." She stated the essence of the matter. "With the opportunity to get a contract for a new division, you won't have time to breathe." I was planning on doing a lot of work with one of my home builders that was scheduled to start within the next 2 years. It was to be a subdivision of approximately 120 luxury homes. It also included an 18-hole championship golf course. I considered the logistics of organizing my crews to do the work or the possibility of hiring more people. "You could do both. If you were a lawyer specializing in business law, I would have both a business manager and personal representation at home," I said, trying to convince her not to change. "You can help run this over the summer and between semesters." "I do not think that." She had a sly smile on her face. "Okay, Don, I won't change, but it will cost you." Is the word "sucker" appearing on my forehead? I'm very smart when it comes to business, and I have a lot of common sense. But when it comes to understanding women's wiles, I am a complete loser. "Then my plea deal is that we will have to pay to become more like a couple." There was determination in her eyes. I had a strange feeling as if I was being led down a garden path, only to be thrown into the lake naked. "When my clothes are taken home." "Okay, counselor, we'll start going on dates starting Friday night. Besides, today is your 21st birthday. You choose the place yourself." I laughed and slowly shook my head. My defeat was obvious. Carrie was an advanced placement student and was able to take several college courses in high school. To say this girl was smart would be a gross understatement. Consequently, while most college graduates celebrated their 22nd birthday during their senior year, Carrie celebrated it during the summer between her first and second years of law school. "Okay, then I'll need your credit card. I will need to buy a new dress for the occasion." Her face was beaming with excitement as she had just won her first case. "Yeah, I just screwed up." "Well played, isn't it?" I shook my head and laughed as Carrie held out her hand. She knew she had just taken one hit on me. From now on, I will need to be better prepared. I wouldn't like to be an adversary's advisor. "Okay, young lady, you got me. After you finish the kitchen, bring me my wallet. Tomorrow you can go shopping. Just don't skimp on the store." I finished eating, then went to my office to do some paperwork and double-check the routes the next day. Friday evening arrived. I had already showered, shaved, dressed, and waited in the living room. Carrie laid out my clothes while I worked. Exactly what a wife would do. I was looking forward to seeing what restaurant Carrie chose and what new dress she bought. But whatever she wore, it would look absolutely beautiful. My house is located on several acres outside the city and is built in the shape of the letter T. So, the large master bedroom with its own bathroom is on one side of the house, and the rest of the bedrooms are on the other. Her bedroom also has a bathroom. The living room is at the front of the house with the main entrance. The corridor leading to the office is located next to the living room. My office is located in a separate wing in the center of the house, next to the office, with a separate entrance. This leads to a large barn containing trucks and equipment. The kitchen and dining room are off the study and overlook the backyard. I heard her heels click softly on the carpet as she walked down the hallway from the bedroom, while I stood nervously in the living room. My jaw almost hit the floor when I first saw her. Carrie bought one of those little black numbers. Her pert, braless B-cup breasts jiggled as she walked. "Dude, am I in trouble today?" I moaned loudly. "What did you expect me to wear for the only man I'm truly in love with?" There was a bright smile on her face. She performed a pirouette, then a curtsy. The dress, what little there was held on her shoulders by two thin straps. There was no one behind. The first piece of material started at the top of her ass. The dress ended mid-thigh. I just hoped she was wearing panties. Her makeup was flawless. Her fingernails, toenails, and lips were dark red. Her long blonde hair fell freely over her shoulders and shimmered in the light. Around her neck, she wore a necklace adorned with precious stones, and long earrings with precious stones hung from her delicate ears. The ring on her left ring finger looked like a diamond. He was wearing what looked like a diamond ring. She wore a gold bracelet on her left ankle. She told me she wore it to show everyone that she belonged to me. The little girl I had met and come with her mother many years ago now stood before my eyes as a grown woman, confesses his love to me. For the life of me, I didn't know when she turned into this very beautiful creature. She came up to me, took my hand, kissed my cheek, and very sexy whispered in my ear, "I love you, Dawn," and we went out to dinner. If I wasn't in love with her before, I am now, because I realized that I am the lucky one. I just couldn't understand what I did to deserve such an honor. As we drove, Carrie sat as close to me as possible. I couldn't shake the stiffness in my pants. Her hand did not leave my right thigh until we reached our destination, which she pre-programmed into the GPS. As it turned out, it was a very high-class restaurant. Well, I thought she had chosen the perfect place for tonight. As she got out of the car, the valet looked at Carrie lustfully. I gave him a nasty look, but he just gave me a thumbs up. To say Carrie was the center of attention as we walked into the restaurant hand in hand would be an understatement. I could hear the silverware hitting the plates when they dropped it. As we ate, I kept seeing both employees and customers staring at her. Oddly enough, I was proud to be with her and to know that she was with me. I didn't care if people thought I was robbing the cradle or that I married a trophy wife. I have seen at least one husband hit more than once by his wife for looking at Carrie. After finishing dinner, we sat for another hour and discussed the upcoming contract for the new unit and the distribution of crews. She very ably demonstrated that she understood business very well. Carrie said we would need to hire more people. I agreed. This time I didn't allow myself to be alone with Carrie as I walked along the beach. Instead, I took her to the dance. At least in a crowded club, I wouldn't want to make love to her in front of a sand dune. Instead, she made love to me on the dance floor. Every time another guy asked her to dance, she refused. She just waved the ring on her left hand, although it wasn't a wedding ring. It took all my strength not to put Carrie to bed when we walked through the door. The next morning, I spoke with my 6 crew leaders, got their input, and set about hiring another crew to run the new division. I appointed one of my longtime employees to the position of foreman. I divided the current work into parts so that my new foreman would gain experience in managing his people. Carrie stepped in and took over during the summer holidays. Life went on. Planning for the new unit was going very well. In the fall, Carrie continued her studies as well as taking care of the home. I was truly amazed at how she did it. She is a born housewife. She will be a wonderful mother. And then the day came when Carrie graduated with honors in the spring, receiving a bachelor's degree. She was accepted right away and was ready to start law school in the fall. Our Friday dates have become longer and more intimate. It was during one of these dates that I realized that I had much stronger feelings for her. For the next 2 years, I kept these feelings under control. I wanted her to focus on school and not on me. It was almost a Herculean feat, but I knew it couldn't last forever. Since I didn't want to hurt her in any way, I only allowed her to do sweet, sweet things. I asked her to stay in her room. I wouldn't let us become completely intimate. This was in case something happened that changed my mind. It was during our date right after Labor Day. She was in her final year of law school. After dinner, Carrie asked me to take me back to the beach. She took off her shoes, leaving them in the car so we could walk along the water's edge. She held my hand tightly. She stopped us after walking for a while in silence. The beach was empty. There were no houses in this area. A very bright full moon had just risen and illuminated the water with a golden glow. It contrasted with the white caps of the waves. She turned and tiptoed around my neck. Her hands just managed to come together. Then she kissed me with the passion that a woman has for her man. I hugged her waist and lifted her slender body up. Then she wrapped her legs around me. My hands moved underneath her so that I was holding her buttocks. She slowly broke our kiss. "Take me home, Dawn, and make love to me, so I can finally show you this deep love that I have for you." She resumed our kiss just as a wave hit us. I turned us over on our sides. Then, pushing us with my hands, I was able to get to my knees. "You know, it would be a lot easier if you let go." Carrie was still hugging me. "No, you'll just have to do it yourself." We both laughed. She let go. She sat heavily on her butt. At that moment, another wave, larger than the first, hit us. "This one washes the dress," she screamed. We both quickly stood up, realizing the coldness of the water, and walked back to the car, laughing as the water dripped from our clothes. "This is something you can tell your grandchildren about," I said joyfully. "Dawn, you offer?" Carrie asked in a joyfully trembling tone. "I was 31 years old when I married your mother. I'm 43 now. I don't understand how you would want to marry an old man like me." I was genuinely confused. "So, yes, Dawn, I would like to marry you, even if you think you're an old man," she whispered tenderly, wrapping her arms around my neck again. "Then I think we need to make it official." I got down on one knee. "Would you, Carrie Ann Rogers, agree to become my wife?" I pretended to be holding a box with a ring. "Well, I really need to think about it." She pretended to be deep in thought, all for 2 seconds. "Yes." She jumped into my arms and resumed our anxious kiss. "When we went live, I had to make it official. Then tomorrow we will go to the jeweler and you can pick up your ring. It's been there for several months now." She attacked my mouth with her kisses. "Keep in mind, I want a simple ceremony, how we say our vows in the courthouse," I said, putting her in the car. "So, you're telling me that you've been planning to ask me to marry you for a while now?" She hit me on the arm. "Dawn, I'm telling you now. Don't ever hide anything from me again." I grabbed her hand and kissed the back of it. "Yes, dear." Then he kissed me again. When we got home, I carried Carrie into the house. We made love. I was silent. I spoke to her quietly. I told her about my love for her, and also about the wonderful life that we will spend together. I kissed her gently. We got married right after she graduated in the spring. I invited her to intern at the law firm that handles my business for most of the next 2 years. She needed real experience. After that, she will work outside the home, but will still remain an employee of the company. I'm sitting here looking at my income statement spreadsheets when several small body parts fly into me, jump into my lap, and wrap their arms around my neck. "Dad, Mom says you need to come over for dinner. Getting cold." "Okay, Lisa." My 7-year-old daughter tells me. I kissed the top of her head. "I'll tell your brother." My 5-year-old son David was playing with his trucks right outside my office door. She jumps down and flies back to her mother. Carrie later told me we had another one on the way. The life I dreamed for myself many years ago finally happened within the last decade. Now I know that I can truly die a happy and contented person. The question that I have asked myself so many times over the past years has come to my mind again. How did I get so lucky? Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think. Click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click.